Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing very well. Today we're looking at the Gazzelle helicopter and how to make the flight controls what I would describe as a bit more realistic in feel. So any of the Gazzelle sub-variants, the Lima, the Mike, the Minigun, the Stroll, I love watching them and I love having them on my side because they're all very capable, all very good at what they do. But I hate flying them, and I hate flying them because to me it always seems like flying a cartoon. I've never enjoyed this flight model. I've always considered it the worst in DCS, even worse than the low fidelity planes like the MiG-29 and stuff before they were fixed. They've now got high quality models, flight models, but they used to have some really crappy ones if you can remember back a couple of years ago. Well, this has always been my worst, and that's because it doesn't feel, just about everything else in DCS feels just about right. You can feel the key forces that you would have in flying a real vessel, like momentum, like inertia, whether that we're talking about linear measurements, whether we're talking about rotational. You go and get in a Huey, you can feel that rotational inertia, you can feel the linear inertia, you can feel the momentum of the Mi-8, and you feel it obviously by how the aircraft moves in response to your stick movements. That's the only sense of feel that we have in DCS. But the Gazzelle, to me, is just wrong. And it's very controversial, and it's controversial because, as far as I understand, the guys who made this got real Gazzelle pilots to fly it, and they said it's, it's spot on in its capabilities and how it flies, and obviously they are infinitely more qualified to judge than me. That said, to me, it's still just not right. In my mind, this thing weighs, 2 tons? A ton and a half, as much as a fairly big car, and therefore it's got to have a relatively large amount of momentum and inertia. It should take time before it being completely static here, before it can rotate. Even if it's highly maneuverable and highly light like it is, it still can't overcome those physical effects, which means it needs time to accelerate from no rotation to some rotation. No movement to some movement, and it just doesn't do that in here from how I feel it. I still consider the model not to be correct, I always stand to be corrected, but that's how I think it is. And what we're going to do today is to look at changing some joystick settings on advice from some of my guys that can make it feel a bit better. It doesn't fix it completely, but a bit better. So the first thing we need to show is what am I talking about? Why am I unhappy with this? And so I'm going to try and show you that now this is a feel thing. This isn't something I can quantify unless I got really geeky, which I'm not going to do. So it's something you're going to have to listen to my words and kind of watch what the chopper's doing in comparison to down here. And what we're interested in today is not the collective, but we want the cyclic and the rudder. So the first thing is watch as I add some collective and take off, how quickly it transitions from zero rotation to some rotation in terms of kind of rudder effect. You're pushing up there. Do you see how that suddenly started moving? There was no slow transition from zero rotation to some rotation. It was just zero rotation, some rotation, and that's exactly the kind of thing that pisses me off. I know I'm not necessarily one of the super realistic geeky guys in DCS, but I still want my planes to feel like planes. Otherwise, I'm just not interested in flying them. And this is going to be even harder to quantify, then just doing flying about, it just doesn't seem right to me. Look at the small stick movement. Oh god. Don't worry, I'll cut that out. Try that again. Relatively small stick movements that I'm doing, which in another chopper would give very little, if almost no change. It's, first of all, the intensity of the movement of the helicopter is just so aggressive, and that's the thing that we're going to look at today in terms of what we can try and help to reduce. So just, like I say, look at this tiny amount of stick movements I'm doing. That's about just a few millimeters on my end, and she is rolling about. But the other thing is, again, the change of direction. I think I've just hit on my main problem with the Gazzelle there. It's the speed in change of direction. What we would call that? Jerk, the change of acceleration, the rate of change of acceleration. I think that's what I mean. So watch as I roll right, stop. It just kind of stops. It doesn't slow down its roll. It stops. Roll, stop. Roll, stop. That's kind of how it feels to me. Rotate, stop. There was a tiny bit there, but not enough around the smaller movements. And so I just get a feel it doesn't want to roll over, it wants to stop. And I'm going to crash probably. Now, you can't really take my word for it, you've got to kind of come in here and try it for yourself. That doesn't feel right. See what I mean? See how it jerks from side to side? That change of, what would we call that? Rotational acceleration, I suppose that is, I think. I may be saying the wrong words here, but I'm just really trying to give you a feel for it. See how sharp that is? Why is it that sharp? Couldn't do that in a Huey. And that's what gets me. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that per se. I can fly perfectly well like that. But the feel of it just doesn't make me feel like I'm in a helicopter. It makes me feel like I'm in a Flintstones cartoon. That's what gets me. And the only thing is, I think it could be so easily fixed. That said, a lot of you probably won't think it's a problem. A lot of you love the Gazzelle. But I don't. Why don't we just go and jump into Huey to see the difference? Okay, we're in our Huey now, and we've got exactly the same setup in terms of... I've got what I call my standard setup, which is the same as what I've got on my Huey at the moment. Which is, so if I click on one of my axis controls, I've got everything set to standard, but my standard 25 curvature plus 25 curvature, which I've got on the Gazzelle, and that's just everything I keep standard to keep it neutral. That's what we're going to be playing around with today. And look at the difference. Look at the this has just got it bang on for me here. Look, as I put the collective up, and it transitions from no yaw to some yaw, and I'm not putting any input here. All I'm doing is turn the collective up. There is a change. There's a rate of change of turn here, and it feels smooth. It translates to me, the driver. It feels like weight. It feels like the thing has rotational inertia. And if we were to go up, I'm doing the same stick movement as I did in the Gazzelle look. Now, obviously, whereas this stick movement would tilt the Gazzelle about 50 degrees over, it's only tilting this plane about 5 degrees over. But it's not that amplitude that's actually annoying me, because you can change that relatively easy. It's the rate of change of movement. Let's settle on that term there. So look at the rate of change of movement, left to right. I'm doing exactly as I did. In fact, I'm doing it a lot more aggressively in this as I did in the Gazzelle. And it's got smoothness coded in there. Look, I'm having to do full stick deflection. And again, to repeat, I'm not having a go at the magnitude of movement. I'm having a go at its simulation of momentum and inertia. Loads of momentum and inertia simulated in the way this moves, and it's not there in the Gazzelle. And a load of you are going to say, oh man, you don't know what you're talking about, you're just an idiot, and the Gazelle's really light. And I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is very light. I'm sure it's a ton and a half. A ton and a half still complies to physics the same as applies to this Huey. Yes, the Huey it will apply more to. I will feel more inertia and more momentum in the Huey, but I should still feel some noticeable inertia in that Gazzelle. I'm certain of it. And I'm certain it's not modelled properly in those rate of change of direction, rate of change of movement. Okay, sorry that took so long. That's been brewing up in me for about 3.5 years now, and I finally managed to kind of get it down on paper or get it down on video of what's pissing me off. And I really want to see ED or someone take it over and get that fixed, because it's a really good weapon. So, we can't fix that, but what we can do is make it a bit better with suggestions from the guys. What we're going to do is dumb it down. We're going to try and change our magnitudes, and we're going to try and... Oh, hang on. Okay, so we're back in the Gazzelle now, and we're going to look at trying to make it feel a bit more like the Huey, trying to make it feel a little more sluggish and like it's got some weight that we're slinging under the rotor. So we're going to go to the dust control. So what I've got so far, if I go to axis commands, I'm interested in cyclic pitch, cyclic roll, and probably rudder as well. And how they are set up at the moment is I've got my basic setup that I have for all aircraft, just keeping things simple is the way I like it, in case you have to go and redo them again, which is quite likely. I've got that standard, that standard, that standard, and curvature as I have as a standard plus 25. So the suggestion I've had, and this will differ between all of you guys listening because we all have different joysticks, and all different joysticks are different in that they have different amounts of play to get a certain response. They feel differently, different size strength springs, and and plus everyone has their own personal way they want their joystick to feel and whatnot. But the purpose of this video is to kind of make the vehicle feel a bit more like the Huey, a bit more like it's got inertia and the momentum that I desire. And what I do is saturation, saturation Y all the way down to 50. And what that means is if I might move my joystick fully left, at full left actual joystick deflection, I only gave 50% Gazzelle stick deflection. So I've halved the amount of input my joystick can possibly do. So at full deflection, it can only give half Gazzelle movement. Now for the curvature, I'm going to take that, I'm going to leave it there for a second at 25. I'm going to do the pitch. This is tune. I'm going to take that down to 50 as well. So in a pitch, we only get 50% authority. That's probably the better way of describing it. And the rudder, I want a little bit more authority. I'm going to try 60 because when you start reducing your rudder authority, it can get a little bit dangerous because you do need to swing around in some cases very quickly. So, okay. And let's give that a little go and see if we can start feeling, artificially adding in a bit more feeling. That's what we're doing today. So, it's still going to, you see that, how that swung round as soon as I took off. That's still there. I can't get rid of that. I'm not putting any input for that. So that kind of, that jaggedness, jerkiness, lack of change of rate of movement is still there. But what I can say now is that it's still not perfect. It's not as bad as it was. Still a little bit much. I can still swing it around so quickly. But it is a bit better. I'm going to go a little less than 40 actually. Let me just try and see if I can land the bloody thing. Already it's easier to land and that kind of thing, I find. Let's just take a little more off there. Cyclic. Let's take that down to 40. So we've got only 40% authority now. And a positive curve. I'm going to take a little rudder off. Just a little smidgen off. Let's go and see how that feels now. Again, we can't stop this jaggedness as it takes off, because that's out of our control. Now it's a bit better. I can still feel a little bit of clunkiness from the flight model, but it is better than what it used to be. Even going to consider taking some more off, Because still, compared to the Huey, it still is more lively than I think you're ever actually going to need. Access command. Take it all the way down to 30, so we can only give 30% authority into this helicopter. It's probably going to still be too much. Okay, let's give that a go. Ah, and you can see down the bottom left there, that is full stick deflection now. That is full stick deflection, that is full stick deflection, that is full stick deflection. It's a lot better. It's given us a kind of bit of artificial feel that I crave in my helicopter. And if I need to, move around fast to dodge missiles, I can still do that. Look, I'm still infinitely more, I'm still much more maneuverable than a Huey. And it also means I'm not going to roll over by accident. You can easily crash in a Gazzelle by just putting too much movement in. I still look at that. Still really roll it. If anything, I want to take a little bit more off. It's given it a bit of artificial feel to match the Huey a bit better. Still not perfect. There is still rate of change of movement is still not very good at that point where it changes direction. But it's better. Still doesn't have much feel of weight. That's still the problem. It doesn't have much feel of inertia or momentum or weight, which are all going to be linked, obviously. So that's it there. I may go ahead and take a tiny bit off. That's just for me. But just to revise what we've done. So the axis tune, I've gone down to 30 saturation. I've gone down to a curvature of a positive curvature of plus 25. Some of our guys want to go down to 0 or slightly negative curvature. I actually like that curvature. It gives a bit more of that kind of fake feeling of weight, just ever so slightly. Possibly even a bit more curvature. Okay, and same as the Y. And the rudder, I allowed a bit more. I allowed 60. The rudder is not as big a problem on the Gazzelle, I don't find, as the cyclic. And the curvature I've just left the same. So that's just about it there. I'm going to do a few more tweaks, but that's just roughly how I want it to feel better. So that's the end of the video. So the first half of the video was basically a rant at the Gazzelle and why I don't like it in terms of how it flies. And then I showed how we can make it a bit more like the other 3 helicopters. A bit more natural feeling as best we can. Anyway, I hope that helps some of you out there, and see you later.